Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be joining you and just kind of curious. I know you all saw the topic today. We're going to be talking about resilience, but when you all think of resilience, if you would just maybe put in the chat for me, if you want to come off of mute, happy to hear your voice as well. What comes to mind when you hear the word resilience? So if you put that in the chat, or feel free to come off of mute and let me know your thoughts there. When you hear the word resilience, what is it that comes to mind?
Perseverance.
Perseverance. Okay, I heard that. I love it. What else? What else comes to mind? Flexible. I see flexible in the chat. Fantastic. We're going to talk about that flexibility a little bit. Able to bounce back, Monica says. Okay. Yes, absolutely. Any other thoughts? Overcoming obstacles. So I see Yolanda says succeeding despite the challenges, adaptability. That's another really, really good one. Yeah, so I believe that all of those are aspects of what it means to be resilient. I'm going to share my screen with you. I do not want to PowerPoint you too much, but I do have just a few slides that I'll share, really just more so as a way to guide me through this conversation, because it's a conversation that I really enjoy having. And so I appreciate you all putting in the chat what you think about when you hear the word resilience, and many of the comments that you shared or similar things that come to mind for me, right? So we think about, bouncing back comes to mind. You think about adaptability. You think about your ability to persevere or to push through. And oftentimes we get this picture in our minds of, at least I do, of rubber bands, right? So you hear this language of, well, resilience is about your ability to bounce back. And when you think about holding a rubber band, like if I had one of those tan rubber bands in between my pointer fingers right now, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to let go of one of my fingers really fast, right? Because what happens when that rubber band bounces back? It pops up against your other finger, right? And so I think oftentimes that is the definition of resilience that we have, right? It's like, how do we bounce back? Not recognizing the pop back, right? Or that sting that comes with prioritizing this expeditious bounce back from some set of circumstances where you've encountered a loss. And so today, what I want you to do in the chat here, so I want you to think about the last 12 months, right? And so obviously, I think the key word of our time right now, they're probably like 3. So unprecedented, I'm like, okay, if we hear that one again, that's out there. We also hear new normal, right? That one's out here. So even beyond that, think about between May 2019 and May 2020. I want to have a little exercise in vulnerability right now. I want you to throw in the chat something that you've lost during that time frame. So what have you lost over the last year? Just one thing you want to throw in the chat there, and we will share out. I won't read names. I'll read responses. So what's one thing that you've lost over the last year? All right, I see them rolling in. A job. Oh, my partner, Lily Beth, definitely keeping you in my thoughts. Daniette says faith in people. I see stability, peace. Yeah. Vehicle. Absolutely. A baby. Wow. Yes. So I know that we can all relate, right, to having lost something. And what I want to talk to us about today in the last 23 minutes or so that we have, matter of fact, let me retract that. I don't want to talk for the next 23 minutes, because I really want this to be a conversation. That's really how I love teaching. Like, I'm learning as I'm sharing. And so I want to hear back from you. So I appreciate you putting those comments in the chat. But I want us to share a little bit around thriving through loss with what I like to call real resilience. And this conversation is really grounded in this thought process of really redefining resilience. And when I say redefining resilience, what I mean by that is we often think about resilience through this lens of bouncing back, right? That's the language that we give to it. We get this picture in our minds of a rubber band, but what happens often when we've experienced loss, if we allow ourselves to be fully honest about the experience that we have, we don't really bounce back. And I don't have to speak generally. I can share personally. I was going to share a work story, but kind of based on the responses, I'll share a bit more personal stories that is ingrained with work, but a bit more tied to the loss of a loved one. So I can remember it being 2014. And I'm a native Nashvilleian, so I'm sitting in Nashville, Tennessee right now. And I was living in Chattanooga, Tennessee at the time, so maybe 2 hours or so away from here towards Atlanta. And I was engaged at the time, so wasn't quite married yet. Shout out to my husband, Joseph Cole. He's on. Thank you, honey, for your support always. And so I'm engaged. I'm working this corporate career in the healthcare space, and there's this really great opportunity to be promoted to a new not a new company, a new position. And it wasn't just a new position, but it was a new industry, right? So I'm in sales at the time, and there's this marketing opportunity, and I had been developing myself, if you will. You know, if you're in corporate, you know about having IDPs and doing all of the things to be on track with capabilities and everything that you need to position yourself for career advancement. Check, check, check. Doing all those things. So this role comes up, and it is a dream opportunity. Many people may or may not know Pfizer, but almost everyone knows Viagra. So this particular role was on the marketing team with Viagra. Right. So an international brand, well-known brand. And in my mind at the time, I'm thinking, if I get this job opportunity, like I'm gonna be able to go anywhere, do anything. Right. So I'll speed up here, but I'm in this interview process, and it's my first time I'm interviewing for a marketing role, and I'm being told that, you know, Brittany, you probably want to get started because it usually takes at least 5 or 6 times for you to kind of put your name in the hat and go through the process, you know, let people get to know you, the whole thing, right? Corporate talk. And so I'm like, okay, well, hey, no time like the present. Let me get started with this girl. You know, sounds like it's unlikely if I'm listening to everyone else, but I'm going to, you know, hey, let's do it. I feel prepared. I feel like this is a great opportunity. Put my name in the hat, y'all. I get the job. And not only do I get the job, but I get the job 7 weeks before Joseph and I's wedding on 12/13/14. Now, I'll never forget the day that I got the call. It was a Friday. I was in Chattanooga. I was in my bedroom. Joseph was in Nashville, right? Because we're not married quite yet. And I get this call, and the hiring manager is after 5. It's maybe like 5:15. And she says, Brittany, I didn't want to hold you in suspense over the weekend. Wanted you to know that we want to extend the offer to you, right? So like, whatever professional response you're supposed to have thrown out the window, I start screaming. I'm excited. I'm like, yes, got the job. Oh my God. Like, you know, my mind's already going about all of the things that this means. And so I call my family, and my next call, you all, was to my wedding planner. And I'm on the phone. I'm like, hey, about that cocktail hour, can we get like some subways and some street signs? We need to make it New York themed, right? So I'm all in. Meanwhile, my fiance at the time is now husband, has applied for grad school. He wants to go back and get his MBA. He's an architect. Well, he gets a full ride to Emory in Atlanta, Georgia. I just got a big job in New York, and we're getting married in 7 weeks, probably like more like 6 weeks at the time. So long story short, I say no to the role, and insert grief that I didn't know was grief until after the fact. And so I want to talk with you a little bit about what I believe are 4 key areas that we need to think about when we're redefining resilience. All right. So I want you to keep that story in mind, because I'm going to finish it as we're talking through here. So the first thing that I think is really important when we're thinking about redefining resilience, or really having real resilience, is we have to be reflective. We have to sit down and say, you know what? How am I actually feeling as a result of losing that fill in the blank? For me at this point in time, it was an opportunity, right? What is it that I actually lost, right? We have to identify the loss. And I think what happens so frequently is that we just get in this mode of like, go, 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 and right, trying to bounce back, that we don't do this step, right? In an effort to appear to be back to where we were prior to. So really sitting down with ourselves and really assessing, like, what did I actually lose? In that instance, I lost some brand equity, right? I lost some confidence of leaders that say, yep, Brittany's the right person for the role, or yep, Brittany, I'll write your recommendation, right? But a lot of what I was grieving wasn't really actually aspects that I had lost, right? I still had the same level of skill set, the same capability, right? And so I had to do this next thing. I had to evaluate. I had to say, okay, Brittany, like, you still work at this great company. Yes, you are catching some headwinds, a lot of side eyes, and a lot of water talk conversation with your name in it, because, oh my gosh, who does she think that she is, that she didn't take this big job? Well, I was a person that was actually living out the value of my family comes before work. And this just wasn't the best move for my husband and I at the time. Like, it just didn't work out when all of the details came out, right? But you have to say, okay, how can I anticipate the disruption that's going to happen and have the tough conversation? So you all, I had to really sit down with, and it was hard. Like, let me just put emphasis there. Like, it is hard to sit down and have tough conversations about, especially around loss, because again, we have this thought process that you're supposed to experience loss and then you're supposed to bounce back to wherever you were. And that's not the way that this happened. So where has this loss impacted me the most? In what situations am I most triggered by the loss, right? And who do I need more clarity from, or who do I need to be more transparent with in these tough conversations? For me, it was that hiring manager that eventually became an advocate for me, but it didn't start out that way. She was dodging me left and right, but I'm like, listen, we're going to be a thing. Okay. And so, maybe it was my advocates, my husband, my family, right? So there were these tough conversations that I needed to have as I evaluated. Third, then you've got to make the adjustment, right? So for me in this story, the adjustment was, okay, I still want marketing. Like, my aspiration has not changed. I need to go about it a little bit differently. So really thinking through, how do you accept the outcome, but then be the very thing that you need, right? And there's this underlying tone of service here that I had to exhibit even in my corporate career, to say, okay, how do I serve where I am? New York isn't happening right now. I'm in Chattanooga. How do I serve my team? And I started taking on projects that started out as district projects, that became regional projects, that became national projects, that got me the exposure and back into position to be ready when the opportunity came. And then the opportunity came, and we actually moved to New York. So we had a wonderful time, relatively speaking, spending about 2.5 years in New York. And the reason why I say relatively speaking is because 3 months after I took that position, so this is now, so I told you that happened in 2014. This is now 2017. Joseph has graduated with his MBA. So he's got a really great job at like the leading architecture firm, Gensler, in New York. The door opens for me. I get another marketing gig that's like tailor made for my skill set, working in digital marketing. Loved it. Had about a $25 million budget. Was this crazy experience. Was a client of Google and Facebook. It just really set me up for things that I wasn't even considering at the time. And then 3 months after I said yes to that, my mother passed. And anyone that knows me knows that she and I, and you may not know, but she's right here on my desk. I'll show you a picture of her here. That's my mom. And this was at my bridal shower. But yeah, we were best friends. So this idea of like, you don't bounce back from that. It's not like, oh, I'm back. But I have to be able to accept the outcome throughout this process and be what I need in service to other people in an effort to journey forward. And then here's the last thing, and I want to open up for conversation and questions. So if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, or feel free to come off of mute here in just a moment. But I believe as women, it's so critical that we lose the cape. Now, I recognize that may sound harsh. Let me ground what I mean. I think sometimes there's this additional pressure as women, particularly in professional settings, to make up for what we feel like we aren't being perceived as in the workplace, right? Because of bias and a litany of other reasons. But I think sometimes it does us a disservice when we are not transparent in our process of going on this journey of being resilient leaders, to say, you know what? Like, I experienced this and I need to get real about where I am, right? I need to be reflective. I need to really evaluate. I need to make the adjustments. And then I'm not walking back in here with this cape, pretending like this very big thing, like this, my best friend, the person that I would talk to 2 to 3 times a day, like, Mom, I'm heading into a meeting to present to my VP. I cannot talk right now. Like, I can't act like that didn't happen, and that those moments, I'm not faced with those moments throughout the day. And so I think when we're thinking about losing the cape and really just modeling a level of transparency and authenticity, we have to be willing to share the load. And whatever that means for you, but I think it's really about asking ourselves, how am I sharing my transparent truth with others? And listen, I'm not saying make Facebook your diary. Please do not do that. But what I am saying is, how are you taking those small moments, whether it's a small moment on a friend with a girlfriend on the couch, 6 feet apart, so not quite like this picture in today's day and time, right? But or whether it is in a moment like this, to be transparent about where you are, because that is one of the most powerful ways to unlock the very resilience that you're trying to model in other people, to allow them to be able to do the same thing. And so with that, I want to leave you with this: thriving through our transitions, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not about projecting this pseudo strength that you had this really devastating thing happen to you, whether it's the loss of a job, the loss of a loved one, or even the loss of an opportunity that you didn't have, but there was this expectation in your mind that you were about to grasp. You have to be resilient through that, but that really means that you're not trying to go around it or get over it, but you're journeying through it, and you're journeying through it with real resilience by being reflective, by being evaluative, making the adjustments that you need, and then losing the cape to say, this is where I am. I'm going to share the load. I'm going to be what I need as we journey forward. So again, I want to say thank you all so much for having me. I'm Brittany Cole. It's been tremendous sharing with you all today. Thank you so much to our conference community for joining in as well. You can connect with me. I'm the founder of Career Thrivers. So I know we didn't do a formal introduction up front, but the work that I really love doing is this. I love teaching, I love speaking, and I do coaching and consulting around really helping leaders to be resilient and inclusive in the workplace. And so this is just a quick look at how we do that at Career Thrivers. For us, it's really about tailored and really targeted leadership development that meets the needs of diverse talent. We do that in 3 ways, typically through soft skills workshops. You all, I don't like to call them soft skills. I think they're power skills. They're the things that really make or break a workplace experience. It's usually not the technical stuff, right? It's the people stuff. It's the interpersonal things. It's the culture building, right? That are the hard parts. One-on-one coaching, and then working with leaders to help them lead with empathy in a way that allows their people to show up with real resilience. And so we're having a conference right now. Feel free to check it out or connect with me at careerthrivers.com or on Instagram there. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. Let me check the chat. You all, I'm always really bad about doing that once I get going and flowing. But if you have any questions, definitely let me know. So I see Monica, she says, my ability to have physical contact with my family, yes, as a loss. I see confidence in there, a family member. Yeah, it's especially tough right now, and I think that that's one of the reasons why I'm passionate about this topic just from my own personal experience, but I think also in context with everything that's happening. I mean, it's a topic that we have to get more comfortable talking about and making room for. And for me, I'm really trying to just shed light and even shed things as practical as like, talking points and frameworks for people to be able to do that in a professional setting. Because typically what we find, from a career perspective is that, you don't talk about those things. It's like, work is over here, life is over here, and we act like the two don't depend on one another when they absolutely do. If you have a leader, or if you have someone on your team that's having a really rough time personally, maybe not initially, but eventually that starts to bleed over into their performance, and vice versa. If you're at work and you are frustrated, you're unfulfilled, you feel stressed, you feel overlooked, overwhelmed, ask my husband. No, I'm kidding. Eventually that starts to bleed over into your personal life, right? So it's not this, we often try to compartmentalize our lives, and I just don't believe that that's real at all. I believe, and I'll turn around really quickly, but it's one of the reasons why I have this. And so when I'm coaching clients, I talk about this all the time. Like this is the way our life works. Like it is these links that can't be undone. Now, granted, I could crash on the ground, right? And yeah, but visually speaking, like this is the way that we work. So we come into the workplace, with all of these things, and this is how we show up. And so, listen, I hope this was helpful for you. I see a question here. So Margaret says, what are your other workshops about? Yeah, so there are three main areas that I teach on. So communications, personal branding, and resilience. So this is kind of a preview, precursor, because I know we had 30 minutes here, and I definitely want to be respectful of the time for the resilience chat. So this is kind of the start of a much broader curriculum around resilience, communication. So I'm a speaker. I do speaker coaching with TEDx here in Nashville. And so really speaking for me is less about, I love the TEDx stuff, right? It's on the stage, and it's, there's the art and science of just that whole display. But for me, communication is about like, how do we do this? How do you, get on the phone and have a tough conversation? How do you express what it is that you do by speaking in the language of value and not just talking about I'm, X, fill in the blank title at fill in the blank company. Well, what does that mean? Who do you help and how do you help them? So we do that, and I love that work. And then lastly, personal branding, which for me is less about social media and digital and all of those things, and more about who are you? Like branding is about belief, and belief is built on trust, and trust is built on being really clear about your identity, who you are, and also then your image, how you show up. So those are some of the things that that I get to teach on, and I absolutely love it. So let's see here. Happy to be here. Kim Walker referred me to the conference. That's fantastic, Lauren. I'm so excited that you're here too. Yeah, so Kim and Claude, they're clients of ours, and they're doing amazing things in the wellness space. Again, integrating wellness into professional life. And so I absolutely love that. How did you get into public speaking yourself? Thank you, Margaret. I appreciate that. Listen, I honestly can't take ownership or responsibility. I can take some, but I'm a woman of faith, and I know that speaking is my divine gift. So there's that, but also too, and the reason why I pull back on that a little bit, I have developed the skill. So Toastmasters is amazing. I was introduced to Toastmasters in high school through an organization called Inroads, and I can remember on Saturdays going to ACT prep and Toastmasters to prepare for college. And so I picked it back up even at Pfizer. We had a chapter, and so I joined, and yeah, every other month I went to my Toastmasters meeting, worked my way through my competent communication, certificate. And so, yeah, I think it's just this combination of, even if you're listening, and you're like, well, Brittany, that's not my gift, or that's not my skill set or ability, you can definitely develop it. And I love doing that work as well. So thank you for that. Someone asked, how did you prepare for the TEDx or your speaker experiences? How did you build your brand? Yeah, great question. So in terms of TEDx, I'm a speaker coach. So I help speakers get prepared for the TEDx stage. And so TEDx has a TEDx way, right, in terms of preparing speakers for their TEDx talks. And so, but very similar to kind of how I approach communication. And I know we have about 4 minutes. Maybe I'll do this. So I'll give you a little preview of what I like to call the funnel. And it is definitely, and I'm a little biased, but it is what I believe the best way to communicate any message. So I'm going to share that with you super quick, and I'm just going to draw it for the sake of time. So I call it the funnel because that's exactly what it looks like. So there are a couple things that you want to make sure that you're clear on, and this is communicating any message. If you're turning your camera on to do a video, if you are getting on the phone with a manager to do a one-on-one, or if you're on a stage to do a TED Talk, there are a couple of things. Here's the first place you want to start. What is your core message? And by core message, I mean one sentence. What is the one thing that you want the audience to walk away with? For example, I want you to walk away with redefining resilience and getting real about resilience. That's it, right? So you should be able to put that, and I don't really like saying the word should. I've gotten in the habit of that the last few days, but I recommend you get down to one sentence, right? So what's the core message, okay? So you do that first. think of it as a thesis statement if you're writing a paper. The second thing that you want to identify is your proof. What are the, the points that you have that back up your core message? That could be statistics, that could be stories, right? There's this art and science way to how you do that, but that's the second thing. Threes, people typically remember in threes are science and data behind that. So that's a good number to keep in mind in terms of number of proof points. But those are the first two things that you do. Notice I did not say start with what your intro is, right? Because these two things help you frame up your attention grabbing opener, your AGO, as we call it. So what's like the first thing that comes out of your mouth, the first thing that you say, or however you intro into the conversation, needs to be guided by how you're framing up the conversation in the first place, right? So you want to have a good idea of what your core message is, what's the one thing that you're trying to communicate, what are those proof points that back that up. Then you figure out what your opener or your attention grabber is. And then the very last thing that you do isn't just your close, but it's your call to action. What do you want people to do as a result of hearing you speak? And it's not, please ask me questions. I mean, that's okay, but what are you asking people to do? And it doesn't have to be anything tangible, right? It could be like, the next time that you are faced with a loss and you're being reflective and noticing that I had an expectation that is not going to be fulfilled, or, I had a loved one that passed, heaven forbid, or I have lost, a job or opportunity. I want you not to think about bouncing back from that as soon as possible, but I want you to think about journeying through that with real resilience. That's a call to action. Now, it may not sound like it because I didn't ask you to do something per se, but I did, right? I asked you to rethink and reframe, right? So you want to think about that last, like what's that close? What is that call to action? So this was like 2 sessions in one, but to answer your question, that's how I believe it's just a really simple, clear way. And we call it our funnel to communicate any message, Margaret says, do I do one-on-one coaching? Yes, I will start one-on-one coaching back up the end of June. So if you are interested, if you head over to careerthrivers.com, you can get on our newsletter. You can also drop a message in the contact section as well. So yeah, Monica, I absolutely love your confidence and wealth of knowledge. Thank you. Thank you. I'm inspired to continue speaking and coaching early childhood teachers. Absolutely. It's so needed, right? Communication is like that across the board skill. It doesn't matter what industry you work in. You need to know how to communicate what you do in a clear, concise, and compelling way. So it has nothing to do with being a professional speaker. That's the career that I chose because I love it. But even if you are an engineer, or my husband's an architect, I mean, my goodness, like you have to present your plans to the client. You need to be able to do that in a clear, concise, and compelling way if you want the contract. So communication, and that's why it's one of our pillars. So communication, personal branding, and resilience are the things. So it's 3:31. With that, I will turn it back over to the Girls Night In leaders. But thank you so much for having me join your session today.